Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yisrael Hawkins. Well, Jeff, we've got, sadly, another case of school shooting or incident of school shooting in the news here in the United States. We're going to be looking at a little bit of the monkeypox virus that is kind of spreading a little bit more in Africa, and the flooding. We're seeing a lot being affected by global warming and some catastrophic flooding that has taken place unlike it ever has in certain areas. And we're also going to talk a little bit more about the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. But first, with the new school year comes a new set of problems. A 14-year-old is being held in custody after a school shooting left 2 students and 2 teachers dead. At a Georgia high school about an hour outside of Atlanta, chaos broke out with a random shooting that left 9 others injured. We'll take a look at this news report courtesy of ABC World News for more info.
Breaking news, the new school year just beginning, of course, and today the news coming in of a deadly school shooting. 2 students and 2 teachers killed. Authorities say it was a 14-year-old student. He is now in custody. It happened at Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia, about an hour outside Atlanta. In addition to the 4 dead, 9 others injured rushed to the hospital. Again, the shooter just 14 years old. Law enforcement officers you see there rushing to the scene, inside officers carrying weapons, clearing classrooms one by one, leading students away, their arms in the air. Those students had been texting their parents, barricaded in classrooms, telling them they loved them. They were told to leave everything behind, and tonight authorities revealing 2 students and 2 teachers, of course, did not survive this. The shaken students, as you can see there, told to gather on the football field, waiting for word that they could go home. Parents and loved ones, desperate for the news, you can see them racing to the school to find their children. Authorities have now identified the suspect tonight and say he will be charged with murder as an adult. ABC's Faith Abube on the scene. She's leading us off in Winder, Georgia tonight.
Tonight, terrifying scenes that are now all too familiar. Students pouring out of a school after a 14-year-old fellow student allegedly opened fire. State, local, and federal law enforcement racing to Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia, northeast of Atlanta, just before 10:30 this morning. 2 students and 2 teachers killed, 9 other victims taken to the hospital. The suspect surrendering to authorities without a struggle.
The shooter is in custody. His name is Colt, that's C-O-L-T, Gray. He is a 14-year-old student here at the high school. He will be charged with murder and he will be tried as an adult.
Late today, the sheriff nearly overcome.
I never imagined that I would be speaking to the media in my career over something that happened today, the pure evil that happened today. This hits home for me. I was born and raised here. I went to school in this school system. My kids go to this school system. My heart hurts for our community, but I want to make it very clear that hate will not prevail in this county.
Katan, very sad situation there. I mean, 14 years old, and you know that's the way this young man chose to solve his problems or act out. But so many things taking place at that age with emotions and mental development. It's sad that the violence, was resorted to.
That's right.
Well, monkeypox is spreading once again through the Congo, now leaving children and adults alike dead in its wake. At a medical tent in the area set up to provide treatment and comfort for those infected, many present with symptoms of the disease like rashes, fever, body aches, among other things. Now, DR Congo has recorded more than 18,000 cases since last year, but the true number of infected and deaths as a result of the infection still remains unknown.
Director of Nursing Christian Nsbula of Kavumu Hospital said that their only hope to reduce infection and deaths is by vaccinations. He said the health workers are also affected because they are also exposed, as of course they treat many patients there on a daily basis.
Well, staying in the continent of Africa, now parts of the country of Sudan in the village of Olsi, residents there are suffering from catastrophic flooding that has destroyed homes and displaced many. Now, a local villager said that the rains and floods this year were unlike anything they've ever experienced. She said that her family lost everything in their home, leaving the house with only the clothes on their backs. Now, she also said that it's the first time in her entire life that she's seen torrential floods like this. Everything has been carried away.
Well, currently, due to high waters, tractors are the only way to move about in the area. Floods this year have taken the lives of over 170 villagers. More than 50,000 homes have been damaged or destroyed by the flood since the rains began in June. Now, the fighting in that area, the ongoing fighting that has been taking place, it has already displaced more than 11 million people. Well, that's another burden on the humanitarian efforts there. A lack of medical care in that region, housing and basic essentials are, of course, lacking, causing a lot of frustrations for many of the Sudanese people.
Well, the people of Sudan are calling out to the government for assistance of their basic needs until they can get the resources to begin to rebuild their homes, towns, and villages.
Well, as we move a little farther south in Africa, Nigeria and the people there are struggling with another blow to their economy and livelihoods. Well, this time it's fuel prices. Take a look at the following video for more on this heavy hit to the already struggling country.
Nigerians have woken up to a new reality. Another jump in the price of petrol from 38 to 55 cents a litre. An increase of more than 45%. Desperate buyers queued for hours at this petrol station operated by the state oil company.
When you pay 55 cents a litre at a government-owned petrol station, what do you expect of other independent marketers?
Across the street, another pump sells petrol for 60 cents a litre. Elsewhere, prices have shot up to 70 cents a litre. This is the third increase in the price of petrol since the current government came to power, the steepest being an over 210% jump in 2023. In August, the national oil company NNPC declared a profit of $1.44 billion for the 2023 financial year. 2 weeks later, the NNPC says it can't afford to import fuel because of billions of dollars in debts. Last year, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu announced cutting state petrol subsidies he insisted benefited only a few individuals.
For decades, Nigeria has failed to refine even a litre of petrol, despite spending hundreds of millions of dollars on its 4 refineries. Instead, the country spent on average $10 billion a year to import refined petroleum products under a subsidy regime that critics call fraudulent.
As expected, transport costs have nearly doubled after the latest increase. Food inflation is expected to follow.
You can't make a profit under the current circumstances. You can't even feed your family at the rate we're going.
Some blame the price hikes on the devaluation of the local currency, which made imports more expensive. Many here expect the Dangote refinery owned by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, to bring some relief, having already produced its first batch of refined petrol. It is expected to supply 25 million litres a day to the domestic market this September, increasing that to 30 million litres next month. But analysts say this will not entirely solve petrol shortages in Africa's biggest producer.
You know, it's pretty devastating to them because if our viewers remember, not that long ago, we talked about this same type of hit and the reduction of subsidies to the Nigerian people when it came to food. Now they're being hit in the area of fuel, which they need both those things for their livelihood and to just keep the economy going strong.
Right. Can't catch a break there. Well, possibly the deadliest Russian airstrike in Ukraine took place overnight. 2 missiles targeted a military academy and a hospital in Poltava. Now, the death toll is currently at 50, but hundreds more are injured. With no warning, these missiles went deep into Ukraine, hundreds of miles from the front lines, no one had time to take cover.
One resident of Poltava, Alexander, told PBS NewsHour, quote, "There were two powerful explosions, one after the other. Everything flew out of the cupboard. Everything was covered in glass." End quote. Another child at a nearby school recounts their incident. They said, "It was scary, fear, panic. I don't know how to describe it. I was worried for my parents and my sister, for my loved ones."
Well, President Vladimir Zelensky once again urges for the release of U.S. weapons to protect and defend from this advance. He said, quote, "Air defense systems and missiles are needed in Ukraine, not in a warehouse somewhere. Long-range strikes that can defend against Russian terror are needed now, not sometime later. Every day of delay, unfortunately, means more lives lost," he said.
Well, there are also more lives lost in the city of Zaporizhia, where Russia strikes hit a hotel. Among those who perished, a mother and her 8-year-old son. Zaporizhia is home to Europe's largest nuclear power plant, which Russia occupied soon after the war began in Ukraine.
Well, the plant's external power source was also hit by a barrage of artillery, and the head of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, warned if they lose power, it will lose its ability to cool its reactor. Now, in a press statement, Rafael Grossi said, "I have very often characterized it as very fragile, with uncertainty. Some days we have stability, and then the next day there is an event, an issue, a drone impact." He went on to say the situation is very serious indeed.
But the architect of the Ukraine war, President Vladimir Putin, was being given an honor guard in Mongolia, a country which is a member of the International Criminal Court. The ICC has called for Putin's arrest. Since 1990s, Mongolia has developed a friendly relationship with Western countries, including the United States, since declaring itself a democracy. However, when it comes to who supports the economy, that hinges largely on Russia.
Well, President Putin stated, "Relations with Mongolia are among the priorities of our foreign policy in Asia and have been raised to a high level of comprehensive strategic partnerships." There was a very small voice protesting President Putin's visit to the country, which quickly came to a stop when police arrested those supporters of Ukraine.
Well, we're going to end this report with more coverage of the recent damage in Ukraine and what the EU has been doing to train soldiers to aid Ukraine. Please take a look.
Both Moscow and NATO have so-called red lines that could trigger outright war between them. The conflict in Ukraine now involves many countries, with Western weapons being used against Russia. So are these red lines shifting? And is there a greater risk of a wider war? Russia has launched its biggest attack of the war in Ukraine this year, killing at least 50 people, while Ukrainian forces have hit targets in Russia. Kyiv's forces remain in Russian territory in the Kursk region after crossing the border a month ago. The biggest conflict in Europe since World War II has brought Russia and the West closer than ever to direct confrontation. Russia says it's already fighting a proxy war against NATO, whose members are arming Ukraine, yet the White House has said it doesn't want war with Russia. So what are the so-called red lines for each side? And could breaking them lead to outright war between Russia and NATO?
Body bags carried away in Lviv, a city in western Ukraine close to the border with NATO member Poland. An injured man, one of dozens, is comforted, while people cry as they look at the enormous damage done to a historical neighborhood.
We'll move residents of at least 6 buildings to other places. 2 schools and 2 medical centers were damaged. It's tough.
Several people died in this latest Russian bombing less than 24 hours after the highest number were killed in a single attack this year. On the other side of the country, the city of Poltava was hit by 2 ballistic missiles, killing more than 50 people and injuring hundreds.
Russia will be held accountable. And once again, we urge everyone in the world who has the power to stop this terror.
Ukraine's incursion into the western region of Kursk nearly a month ago took Russia by complete surprise. The risky cross-border move was the most significant and bold since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Ukrainian soldiers have occupied dozens of villages across more than 1,000 square meters.
We want to make this training mission as pragmatic and easy as possible.
The EU's top diplomat has pressured Ukraine's international backers to allow strikes on targets inside Russia. The EU, previously largely seen as an economic and political trading bloc, is now intensively involved in training Ukrainian soldiers.
It is the most successful training mission that the European Union has ever performed. It has trained 60,000 soldiers. And today the ministers agreed on raising the target to 75,000, adding 15,000 more by the end of the year. This is also a good news. We'll do more. Ukraine is requesting. This war requires a constant adaptation to the modalities of the war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has again warned Ukraine and its allies.
We can't allow hostile structures to be created near us, which hatch aggressive plans against us and constantly try to destabilize the Russian Federation.
Discussions have been held in the Kremlin about changing Russia's nuclear doctrine to allow the possibility of using nuclear weapons. French President Emmanuel Macron has also floated the possibility of Western troops being sent to fight in Ukraine. That notion's been dismissed by its partners in NATO, at least for now.
Katan, quite a few interesting things there in that last video we showed. You know, the Kremlin now considering changing its nuclear policy. So we have that, pretty big development there. And then you have the French President, Emmanuel Macron, wanting to send Western troops into Ukraine, but of course NATO is refusing, saying no, we're not going to do that. Right. But then the European Union training 60,000 Ukrainian soldiers and now going to add another 15,000 for a total of 75,000, this year. And, again, that's just all these little things keep pushing Russia a little bit further.
Yeah, and like we've mentioned before, Vladimir Putin and Russia as a whole, they are exercising a lot of restraint, taking into consideration everything that the West has been doing to impose, closer and closer to their borders and doing things that are pretty provocative in nature when it comes to the war front.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to find out more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call the House of Yahweh at 1-800-613-9494. You can visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Israel programs. You can find those online to aid you in your study and understanding of the scriptures and the prophecies found therein. You can find those websites by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.